guys, welcome back to LEE-LUH the podcast. Today I will be having a chat with my friend Fiona, and we're going to be discussing a pretty heavy topic. We're going to be talking about losing a parent. A few years ago she lost her dad, and we're talking about going through that, and we completely forgot to record an intro, so it's just going to kind of jump right in. But thanks so much for coming back, and whether or not you have lost a parent, this is a really beneficial episode to listen to. She talks about how other people, supported her, and she's just really candid about the whole thing, which is a attitude that I think that we don't see a lot. And Fiona offers some really good insight and perspectives, and she was brave enough to come share her story. So thanks so much for being vulnerable with us today, Fiona, and I hope you all appreciate the episode. I feel like you have a really unique story in having gone through all of that.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a good platform for you to talk about your experience.
Yeah.
But we also don't have to get into it.
No, I love talking about it. Weirdly. I love talking about my dead dad. Just love it. No, but I do like talking about it because, which is bizarre. And, I know that this isn't how most people grieve. And, obviously grieving is, different for everyone. But, for me, it just, bodes really well to talk about it because Dino, my dad, was, such an open book and, loved to talk about everything and anything. And, his dad and his brother died in a motorcycle accident when he was younger. And he, talked super openly about that. And he's just a very open person. And so I feel like it serves his memory well to be very open about him and his death and everything. But yeah, so my dad, Dino, is a very hard person to describe because he was one of one, super, super unique. He was the kindest person that you would ever meet. So sweet to people. Whenever I brought a friend home, he would be like, Sophie, Lucy, how are you, sweetheart? He was just the sweetest man ever. But he had bipolar, he had OCD, he was very, very irritable. So he wasn't the best person to live with. And there were times when he could be an absolute just terror to us. But it was never he was never abusive to us. It was just yeah. But he was an incredibly emotional person. One of my favorite stories about him was when he first met Sophie, who's Norwegian. And she came over to my house for the first time. She was the first friend I made in 7th grade. I was in junior high, my first year of junior high. She was the first friend I made, and I brought her over. And my dad was like, Sophie, tell me about you. And she's like, oh, I'm from Norway. And he was like, Norway, I've always wanted to go. And he was like, I was watching the Nature Channel, and they had a documentary about Norway, and I saw the fjords, and I just had this deep longing for the fjord. And he started crying about the fjords and how beautiful they were in Norway, and and he'd never been there before. And Sophie, who's Sophie, she's very normal. Yeah. And she was like, what the hell is going on right now? Who is this man? And I was like, Dino, you're embarrassing me in front of my new friend. But he was a very emotional guy. And growing up, his parents were really, really abusive to him and his siblings. And he was also in football, so he in the Marines, and he had upwards of 12 concussions throughout his life. He had really, really severe head trauma, which now I'm thinking is probably a big lender to not only how he died, but also all of the aggression issues he had during his life, and bipolar and everything. It very well could have been genetic, but that has to have something to do with it. Right. Yeah. But yeah, so my dad was always really weird and out there and sweet, but crazy. And then after high school, I went to college in Canada, and I finished out my first year there, loved it, and I went back for my second year. And at a month into my second year, my mom is Fiona, like, Dino, like, really isn't doing well. Before I left for my second year, I could tell, like, my dad was just getting, like, more confused and more agitated, and, like, he was just, like, declining. I could just tell he was declining, and, like, he'd always been weird, so it was kind of hard to tell, like, oh, is this just, like, normal Dino weirdness, or, like, is something bigger happening here? Mm-hmm. And then I go to college for my second year. About a month in, my mom was like, hey, Fiona, like, just so you know, Dino really isn't doing well. Like, we're taking him to, like, the doctor, like, the neuro, some brain doctor.
Right.
I don't know big words. me no big words. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. Like, just keep me updated. And then he eventually got diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, which I should know, like, the specifics of Lewy body dementia, but it's basically just, like, has to do with, like, the Lewy bodies in the brain, and I don't know. And so he got diagnosed with Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's. Mm-hmm. And so then my mom, like, told me this, and I'm like, shit, okay. And my mom basically had to take care of my dad before, like, we were able to get him into hospice. And he was, like, wearing, like, she had to, like, change.
It happened that fast?
Yeah.
Since the diagnosis?
Yeah. Super, super fast. My dad got diagnosed in October, and he died of March.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Super, super quick. And, like, my mom just had to, like, take care of him, like, for those, like, the month or two before he, like, got put into hospice. And he would, like, get out of bed, and he, like, couldn't walk because he, like, had Parkinson's, and he just, like, could not walk. And he was in a wheelchair at the time, and he would, like, get up out of bed and, like, fall all the time. And then my mom had to lift him up and put him back into bed, and, like, it was just, like, not a good situation at all.
Were you still in school in Canada at that time?
At this time, yeah.
Through, when did you move home?
I moved home November, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, September, or was it just, I think I finished out my first, like, the first semester of my second year.
Okay.
And then I moved back because my dad was in hospice. And then one day when he, like, before he went into hospice, he, like, got up in the middle of the night, and he, like, fell, like, between the wall and, like, the radiator in his room. So his head was, like, wedged between the radiator and the wall. And so my mom had to, like, call the ambulance to, like...
Because it was stuck?
Yeah, because his head was, like, stuck between, like, the radiator and the wall. And then the ambulance came, brought him to the hospital, and then, like, he finally got submitted into hospice. And then my mom told me, she's like, Fiona, like, Dino's in hospice. And I'm like, okay. My family was, like, super lovely about it, though. They were like, Fiona, like, do not feel like you need to put school on hold for this. Like, if you want to stay, like, you can please stay if you want to. Mm-hmm. If you want to come home. Like, we support you no matter what.
Yeah.
And I'm like, obviously I'm coming home. Like, there's no world in which, like, if I had stayed in school while my dad died, like, I just would absolutely never forgive myself. Like, I don't think I would be able to talk about my dad and his death in such, like, light spirits.
Yeah.
If I hadn't.
Mm-hmm. Nor focus on, school.
Yeah. Like,
how are you supposed to do that?
Exactly.
Especially because you were really close with your dad and had a relationship with him and grew up with him in his household, and he, like, it wasn't somebody you didn't really have much of a relationship with. You really did.
Yeah, really, really did. And yeah, growing up, like, I was like my dad and I were, like, buddies. Like, I was his buddy, and I was the only biological child he had ever had. My sister and I have different dads, and my dad had been married, like, 4 times. I think my mom is the 4th marriage, but yeah, Dino was married 3 times before my mom, and he, like, never had kids with any of his previous wives. And I was, like, his first biological kid. And so, yeah, very special. And he, like, he loved me so much. And, like, when he died, it was, like, for a while I really struggled, because it's like, I know for a fact that, like, Dino was the person in this world who loved me the most. Like, I'm the apple of his eye. He loved me the most. Like, and I knew that. And when he died, I was just like, the person in my life who loves me the most is gone. like, and it was just like this weird feeling of just like, what? And like I like loved him so much, and it was just a very like jarring like love and like relationship to just like have lost. And even though like when I moved back and he was in hospice, like I visited him like 2-3 times a week and spent a lot of time with him, and I'm really happy that I did. And
did he always know who you were?
yeah.
Okay.
Which
good.
Don't know how, but like I don't know if he like knew who exactly I was, but I think he saw me. Like every time he saw me, he would just light up.
Something
and
pinged his heart.
Yeah.
That he was like, oh, I love her most.
Yeah. Like his eyes lit up, and like I would be talking to him because he was pretty much nonverbal. Like he couldn't speak. And so I would just like be talking to him, and he would just like look at me and like smile, and like every time I left I hugged him and he would hug me. Yeah. And then I remember like after I had moved back, I had started dating this dude named Jack. And I remember, because my dad was in hospice at the time that I was dating Jack, and my mom was like, oh, Fiona, like you should bring Jack to meet Dino. And I was like, no, like there's no, like that would just be so awkward. Like there's no way I'm in hell I'm doing that. And to me that was like, okay, why am I dating this dude right now who like I don't even really like that much. Like I liked him for a little bit, and then like he was just like not a match. It was not a match. And I'm like, why am I dating this dude while my dad is dying in hospice? And it's like, I know that Dino wouldn't want me to like put my life on hold for him. Like he would never want me to do that. But I don't know. So then I broke up with Jack. And then, my dad died on February 23rd or 4th, I think. I feel like such a bad kid not knowing the exact date. And then like, we had known basically that he was going to die that day because we went to visit him, because the hospice called us and was like, hey, we think this is Dino's last day. Like he's really, really not doing well. And then we were like, okay, we're going to come visit him. So we went and visited him, and he was just like laying in his bed in his room, and was just like, he was in so much pain. Like you could just see it on his face that he was in so much pain, and he was like, couldn't breathe. Like he was like gasping for air and just like shaking in his bed. And it was just horrid. And at this point I'm just like, can we just kill him? Like, can we please just like do an assisted suicide or like something? Because Dino,
it hurts to see him in so much
exactly
pain.
And Dino wouldn't want that. Like years before any of this happened, we would talk about this, and Dino would be like, yeah, like if I'm ever like in a home or anything, like just kill me. Like I don't want to be like half a person. Like I'd rather just die. And before he went into hospice, when like his symptoms were like getting really bad, my sister was like hanging out with him, and my dad like he was like trying to tie his boots, and he like couldn't tie his boots because he like just wasn't able to do that anymore. And he like turned to my sister and was like, please, like Sophia, like please kill me. Like he wanted to die. Like, oh my god.
Oh my gosh. Imagine.
I know.
I mean, you don't have to imagine anything, but I'm just thinking, like, hearing that, what people want to say, like, what's right and wrong, but when it comes to that kind of thing, you just, there's no right and wrong.
No, exactly. Especially if, like, that was, like, literally has been his wish forever, is to, like, die before it gets to that point. But yeah, so like the last day we went and visited him, and then like the hospice nurses basically were like, yeah, this like usually happens, but he isn't gonna die like in front of you. Like 9 out of 10 times when family comes to visit their dying loved one, the loved one will like wait for the family to leave and then die. And we're like, okay. And so then we left, and then it was like 9 p.m. later that night, and my mom got the call from the hospice that Dino had died. And we went to see his body, my mom, my sister, and I. And it was just the most unreal thing ever. Like, to see my dad's body and to not see, like, life in it was the most earth-shattering thing ever. And I was just, like, sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And I just, like, kept on saying, like, what the fuck? Like, what is this? What is going on? And I just couldn't believe it. And I just, like, missed, like, hugging my dad because, like, he loved me so much. And, like, his hugs were just, like, so comfortable. And you could just, like, feel the love coming from him when he hugged you. And I was just like, I miss his hugs. I miss his hugs. And then I, like, go to hug his dead body, and my mom, like, wraps his arms around me, like, as I'm hugging him, which is morbid. But
it's like, you were grieving.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Again, there's no right and wrong in that.
Yeah.
But that's earth-shattering.
Yeah, it was really intense. But yeah, and then after he had died, I don't even know how to explain, like, the months after he died, because, like, I had good days. I had days where I, like, didn't even really think about it that much. But I found, like, a week or two after he died, if I was in my car driving, I was always crying. And I don't know what it was, but it was like every time I got in my car and drove, I just, like, could not stop myself from just crying and sobbing because I just, like, missed him so much. And I had a really, really good support system. All my friends were very, very sweet about it. Were there for me, brought me care packages and packs of cigarettes because I was smoking cigarettes at the time. But yeah, the grieving process, you just never get a handle on it. It's so unpredictable. It's so just different for everyone. And, like, I love talking about it. Like, I love talking about my dad. I love making dead dad jokes. I will do it to no end because that's how Dino would want it. Like, he wouldn't want me to be like, he wouldn't want me to never talk about him. He had too much of an ego for that. Like, if there's one thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna feed my dead dad's ego. I'm gonna do it. But yeah, it's just, like, something that I kind of forget too is that, like, I was 19 when that happened. Yeah. And I kind of just, like, don't realize it. I'm like, that's really young.
That is really young.
Like, that's really, really young. And I think every once in a while I just need to remind myself to, like, be like, Fiona, like, the fact that you lived through that, are at the point that you're at today, and, like, are as stable and doing pretty well in life, like, the fact that you're doing well is, like, really, really impressive.
Well, just to, like, the way that you're able to speak about it so openly and also with such, I don't know, heart, I guess, like, honesty. And yeah, a lot of people can't do that. And I'm not saying that that's bad that they can't, but there's probably people out there that are going through losing a parent or something like that, and they can either relate to you or see your strength and get through it. And I mean, yeah, it's just a nightmare. Yeah,
it was a nightmare, but I don't know. I'm the person I am today because of it. And I'm happy that it happened. Not happy that it happened, but grateful for the person I am because of it, I guess. I don't know. I feel, like, very resilient. Like, this has made me very resilient.
Hell yeah. You're so resilient. And, I mean, I know you said you had a good support system, but I'm curious to know, what is it that you feel like you needed from other people or was really helpful from your friends and people close to you during that time?
That's a good question. I think just, like, the willingness to, like, do whatever I needed at the time. I was working with him at the time that this all went down. I remember, side note, I was working at in the cafe, and I texted my boss, and I was like, hey, just so you know, like, my dad died. I'm not going to be able to come into work for, like, a week. And my boss is like, I'm so sorry. Please let me know as soon as when you can come back. And I'm like, my dad just died. Like, you should be like handing me like 3 weeks off.
Yeah.
Like,
please let me know when you can come back.
Yeah.
Find somebody else to make the sandwiches.
Literally, like, these rich people aren't gonna die if I don't give them a sandwich. You know who did die? My dad. So, fuck off. But my first day back at work, I was just like super, super sad and upset. And I could like come into work out or something, and he like knew that my dad had died. And I was in the back, and I just started crying. Hugged me, and he was like, Fiona, like, what can I do? Like, what can I get for you? And I was like, I really want a pack of cigarettes right now. And he's like, okay, heard. What kind? And I was like, American Spirit Yellows. And then he's like, okay, I'm on my way. And he like left, went and got a pack of American Spirit Yellows, and like came back and gave me a pack of American Spirit Yellows. And that made my day. And I think something to this day that I just really appreciate is people who can like comfortably talk about it. Mm-hmm. Because some people get so weird like talking about death. They kind of just like clam up and like get awkward and like don't know how to approach it, which is like a normal reaction to have. But like, I so don't feel like that. Like, I just would love to talk about it. And like, my favorite thing is like, whenever I tell people that my dad's dead, like, I was at this party one time and I was like talking about how like Dino had died or whatever, and this one girl was like, oh, like, what was he like? What was his name? Like, what was he like? And it was just such a revelation to me. It's like, thank you. Like, his name was Dino. Like, he was like this, that. And like, to open up a conversation instead of it just turning into like, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Because like, it doesn't need to be that. Like, obviously, like, that's horrible. And it is nice to hear people be like, I'm so sorry. Yeah. But like, let's have a conversation about it. Like, I want to talk. I want to tell people what Dino was like. Mm-hmm. Because he was insane.
Well, and open it up, because that is, you get to kind of keep him alive to you that way by talking about
exactly
how he was your dad and you were his favorite person, and instead of the narrative around your dad, like the concept of your dad always being around how he died and that time in your life, shifting it to the time before that, so that when you think of him, you're remembering the parts where he was your dad, and he was amazing, and sometimes not amazing, and sometimes you probably hated him a little bit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But I think that's good for people to know too, because so many people just like have never lost somebody, especially not somebody so close, and so genuinely they just don't know what to do, and so it's easier to just change the conversation, change the subject, be like, oh, I don't want to step on any toes, which is also fair, because, you know, if somebody was prodding at you about it and you were like, dude, let's not talk about my dead dad. Yeah. But it's hard because you're so, like, nonchalant about this stuff and just joke about, like, the most morbid things. Yeah. But I think that stuff is funny because I also have that sense of humor. Yeah. But, so I understand how people don't know how to tiptoe, but I think it's just, like, so helpful for people to know from a perspective of somebody who did go through that, especially at such a young age.
Yeah, for sure. And and it is difficult because everyone's so different. Like, some people don't want to talk about it. Like, not everyone's gonna like make dead dad jokes like I do when their dad dies. Like, I wouldn't expect that, you know. So it is understandable that people get a little cagey around death, because you never know how someone is gonna react, or what they do want to talk about, what they don't want to talk about. Yeah.
But what do you feel like is a good way to handle it? Just asking how they feel about that situation, and just...
And I think, because I feel like you and I have talked a fair bit about this, and like, whenever you like ask, you're like, it's okay if you don't want to talk about it, like, but can I ask? I think that's a good way to say it, because if someone's like, no, I don't want to talk about it, was like, say like, oh yeah, another time. Yeah. Like, there are a lot of ways to like respectfully answer that question. Yeah.
And when I ask about that stuff, it's never because I'm like, oh, well, you're one of my friends, you should tell me everything, or because, well, I just want to know. It's never like that, and I think you know that, and that's why we're able to have conversations about it, but genuinely because you're one of my closest friends that I care a lot about, and that was a really big thing that you went through, and I never want you to think that I'm just, like, brushing it under the rug, or like, oh, yeah, well, her dad died, but whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I never wanted to be that, but it's also, like, time and place is super important as well. Because, you know, when you're in a big group of people about to go out to the bars for the night, probably not the time to ask, so what happened there? Because we didn't meet until after you had been through all of this. But I think that's also something that I feel like just time and place. Maybe.
Yeah, time and place for sure. Yeah, but also sometimes I don't really care about time and place. I'm really, like, weird with when I will and won't talk about my dad. Because, like, sometimes I will, like, avoid the topic like the plague. I was at work one time and I was talking to my boss, who is just amazing, love him to death. And he was, like, asking me about my parents, and he was like, oh, like, what does your mom do? And I was like, da 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 da. And he's like, oh, what about your dad? And perfect opportunity for me to just be like, oh yeah, he passed away like 4 years ago. But instead I was like, oh, like when I was growing up, he was like a bus driver, and I just like completely like danced around the topic. And then there are times when I'm talking to someone and I'll just like drop it in conversation. One time my neighbor and like a friend of his like came into my apartment to like see our cat or something. And I was like, yeah, this is Cat Scrub, because my dad named Cat Scrub. And my neighbor's friend was like, oh, like, what's up with the name, with that name? And I was like, oh, my dad named him that. He's dead. Like, that wasn't necessary, Fiona. Like, you could have easily just
that's part of your sense of humor, too. So
I know, but for, like, a stranger who doesn't know my sense of humor at all, it's probably just so out of pocket. But I actually had, like, a really lovely encounter at work yesterday. Like, I work at a production company, and next week we're, like, shooting this commercial, and we had the pre-production meeting for it yesterday. And there's this PA whose name is Matt, and he is, like, 60 years old or something. And he has been, like, a PA for, like, 40 years. Like, he's a really, really good PA, and, like, is on a lot of our shoots and stuff. And this is my first time meeting him. And I think he must have, like, ADHD or something, because he, like, if you go into a conversation with him expecting it to be a 2-minute conversation, it will stretch into 20, because he just talks and talks and talks. But for some reason, and like there are times when I encounter people like that where they just talk, and I'm like, get me out of here. Yeah, I don't want to talk to you. But for some reason with Matt, it was just like, I could happily talk to you for like 2 hours. Yeah, like he's just a very engaging person to talk to. And he like brought up how he had like worked in Stillwater. And I was like, and he was like, oh, and I was like, I grew up in Stillwater. And he was like, do you know this? And I was like, yeah, like Ed and Ann. And he was like, yeah, I know them. And then I was like, do you know Davis? And he was like, yeah, I know Cubby. I'm like, that's crazy. And then I was like, oh, like, where did you work in Stillwater? And he was like, oh, River Valley Athletic Club. And I was like, and my dad was a personal trainer at River Valley Athletic Club when I was growing up. And I was like, oh my God, like, did you know Dean Matson? And he was like, name doesn't ring a bell. Like, that was like way after my time in Stillwater. And I was like, oh yeah, like my dad was a personal trainer there. And he was like, oh cool. And he was like, yeah, and your dad, is he like still around? And I was like, he passed away 4 years ago. And Matt was like, oh, okay, like how did he die? Like an accident? And I was like, no, like Lewy body dementia. And it was really like refreshing because I know when people hear that my dad died, they immediately obviously want to know. That's just natural curiosity. That's human curiosity. Like, I completely get it. But, like, not a lot of people, like, would ask. Because, like, I guess it isn't, like, super polite to just be like, so how did your dad die?
Yeah, I would say it's probably not very polite.
Yeah. But, like, for some reason, like, coming from Matt, it was just, like, and I, like, respected it. And it was like, I know you want to know. And I respect the fact that you're just asking me. And then he was like, oh, interesting. And then we just like had like a 15-minute long conversation about like my dad and like his death. And he was like asking me questions like, oh, like, did he recognize you at the end? I'm like, yeah, like he always lit up. And like, it was just a very refreshing conversation to have where it was just like so open and so lovely. I don't know. It was interesting. And I like left like work yesterday feeling really grateful for having met Matt and for just like being able to talk to him very openly and comfortably about my dad. It was just really, it was really cool.
Yeah.
And now I get to have another day of talking openly and comfortably with someone about it. I love it.
Aw, well, thank you so much for talking about it.
Of course, of course.
And I want to, talk about your dad.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, he's a complicated person to describe, but he, like I said, he was, a very, very emotional guy. Something crazy. When he was 65 or something, my mom got a bunch of 23andMe test kits for all of us to do. And my dad, his entire life, who he thought was his biological father, was 100% Swedish. So he thought he was 50% Swedish, whatever. And he took this 23andMe test, and he had no Swedish in him. So he found out when he was 65 that this man that he thought was his biological father his entire life wasn't.
What?
Which is just such a earth shattering realization to come to when you're 65 years old.
Yeah.
Bonkers. Absolutely bonkers.
Was that the same parent as his siblings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, really interesting.
Crazy to not know that until you're 65.
After you're that late in life.
Yeah. Well, and did anybody know?
Yeah.
Did his mom even know? I don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
No one's gonna know. And then
no one's gonna know.
I know. And then I remember when I heard about that, I was kind of shit, there's a part of my family out there. Because, whoever my dad's dad was, he might have gone on to have more kids. Mm-hmm. And, those kids as kids or whatever would be, my family. Mm-hmm. And so then I had this moment where it was there's just, a family of mine out there. Even though, not really, but, kind of. But, yeah, so, growing up, my mom was the main breadwinner in the family. Mm-hmm. And Dino, after high school, he went directly into the Marines because his parents were really, really abusive. And he went into the Marines basically just to get away from home. And I don't remember exactly how long he was in the Marines for, but he did photography for the Marines and did aircraft mechanics and that sort of thing. And then after he got out of the Marines, he kind of just bummed around the country, picking up odd jobs. He went to Costa Rica for a little bit. And at one point he lived on Captiva Island in Florida. And that was kind of his renegade crazy years. And he was known as Captiva Dean when he was living in Captiva. And
he had a name on the island.
Yeah, he had a name on the island. He was that iconic. But he just had the craziest life. The stuff that man did. He never got arrested, went to jail, or ever got a tattoo. Those are the only two things in his crazy life that he never did, which is kind of insane to think about. I remember one time I asked Dino, I was Dino, have you ever done meth? For some reason, normal dinner conversation, I guess, at the Matson house. And he was yeah, I did it once, but I didn't really like it. And I was heard.
The way that he talks about it so nonchalantly. Yeah, I tried that. But I also think that's a good way to grow up too, where it's honest and also yeah, you're human and you're probably going to be curious about things. Yeah. And maybe don't get curious about meth. It's super addictive and life-ruining. Yeah. But if you did, then be honest about it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's Dino. He was just such an honest dude. Mm-hmm. Would just speak super honestly. I remember when I was really little, I was Dino, what does the F word mean? Or Dino said the F word, and I was what does that mean? And he was explain to me what the F word meant, very logically, and I'm oh, okay. He just did not believe in ever lying to kids or lying to me or watering anything down. He was always super honest with me and my sister, and I just love that so much, because something that I just don't like dishonesty with kids.
Yeah.
And
did you guys do Santa or the Easter Bunny or anything like that?
Yeah. Because, like, that was kind of unavoidable. Because, like, my mom, like, with my sister, like, she was like, originally she was like, yeah, we're not doing Santa. And, like, my mom didn't even tell my sister about Santa Claus until, like, my sister was in, like, kindergarten. And she, like, didn't know who Santa Claus was. And then the rest of the kids were like, you don't know who Santa Claus is? And then, like, my sister went, like, crying to my mom. She's like, why is it Santa coming to our house?
Oh, sad. She thought it was personal.
Yeah, exactly. So then that kind of, like, didn't work out very well.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, my parents didn't raise us with any religion or anything like that. To each their own, but they just, that wasn't their thing. But yeah, so, like, my dad, he had a bunch of odd jobs. He mainly was a bus driver. And then, like, during the summer, he would work at, like, Ace Hardware.
Okay. Oh, I bet he loved being a bus driver.
He was the best bus driver.
He was probably remembered kids' names and everything.
Yep. Allie and her sisters rode Dino's bus.
Aww.
Yeah, which I just think is the cutest thing ever.
When did you and Allie become friends?
Oh, really? When we were, like, I think I was in 9th grade and she was in 8th grade.
Okay, that's super crazy then that your dad was their bus driver. I mean, not that crazy because you're from the same town, but still, like...
No, it's a little bit bonkers. Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, I remember, like, a couple of days ago at work, I was, like, bored and I was like, I'm just going to look up my dad's obituary. And so I, like...
Don't you get scared you're going to cry? Or is it okay to cry at work?
Yeah, I'm kind of on an island at work. Like, my desk is at the front and, like, few people, like, pass by.
Okay.
And if I do, then, like, I feel comfortable enough at work if someone sees me crying to be like, fine.
It's fine. It's fine. Okay, I just looked at my dad's obituary.
Yeah. But, yeah, I was looking at his obituary on, like, StarTribune.com or something. And, like a ton of people from the bus company had, like, left comments on his obituary saying, like, oh, like, Dino was just the best bus driver. Like, I've known Dean for, like, so many years working at the bus company together. Like, and just, like, seeing all of, like, the messages from people that, like, he loved and that loved him too. It was, like, very, very sweet and, like, very comforting to know that, like, Dino, like, touched a lot of people. But then it makes me sad because it's like there's so many people in my life now who I'm just like, oh, I want Dino to meet them. Like, he would love you. Like, he just, like, he loved anyone that I loved. And he would just love them so much. But if I ever had, like, a falling out with someone, he'd be like, well, like, fuck them.
Yeah.
Like, they're horrible. Like, he would, like, switch so quickly from, like, oh my God, I love them to, like,
it's like,
yeah.
They're out.
Yeah. Very loyal guy. And then I get sad because I know if he knew the job that I had right now, he'd be so proud of me and so happy for me. And he would probably be like, Fiona, I want to come into work with you. Well, I want to meet your coworkers. And I'd be like, no, Dad. Like, no, Dino. No. But yeah. Sweet guy. Weird guy.
How did your parents meet?
They met through a mutual friend. Yeah, but they didn't have a good marriage.
Oh.
Yeah. No, it wasn't good.
So maybe not into their love story.
Yeah. It's not even a love story. Like, they met through a mutual friend. And my mom, to this day, she always just said, like, the reason why, like, I loved Dino so much was because he was just so willing to, like, help out. Like, he was just very much, like, acts of service. Like, I'll help out with anything you need, like, da-da-da, whatever. So that's why my mom fell in love with him. But it didn't last long.
Yeah. But they were together.
Yeah.
For 20 years.
Yeah, for a really long time. And I remember when I was, like, a teenager, I was really, like, because they would just fight and bicker 24/7. Like, they did not love each other.
That's hard to grow up in, too.
Yeah, it was...
like, really hard.
Yeah, and then they would, like, talk bad about each other to me and my sister. And it's just, like, can you please leave us out of it? Like,
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I do, but like, that's none of my business.
Well, and it puts an anxious seed in the pit of your stomach.
Yeah.
Because you learn all these things that you don't really want to know.
Exactly. And yeah, there was just like a lot of tension in our house growing up, like between like my mom and my dad and my sister for like a good like 4 years when she was like in junior high, was just like had a lot of like really, really bad mental health issues, and would like act out and like try and fight my mom. And like multiple times she would like sit our family down in the living room and like read letters to each of us about how horrible we all are.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And like I was just like chilling. Like I was like the most normal one out of our entire family. And like I definitely think that like I'm such a people pleaser. I'm such a people pleaser, and it like has to be because like I had to like keep the peace in my house growing up. And like I hate being a people pleaser so much, but yeah, I don't know.
But now you have a relationship with your sister.
Yeah, really good relationship. We're really close, which is like insane because growing up I wished death upon her. I'm not even kidding. I was like, if she died, I would be so happy. Like really, really, really bad. It was really bad. But yeah, now we're super close, and like I love my sister. She's great. Love her kids.
Thanks so much for being on my podcast, Fiona.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This is fun.
This is so fun. You're like a perfect guest. You just carry.
Thanks. I'm worried that I might talk a little bit too much.
No, that's what a podcast is for.
That's a good point, I suppose.
Thank you so much for being on, and I can't wait to have you again.
Thank you. Yeah, let me know next time you want me. I'll be here with bells on.
Perfect. Love it.
Love it.